presented this morning, Dr. Jimmy Henning. 1990, you went to Kentucky, is that what you told me? He was in Missouri for a while, and we thought we were going to get to keep him, but he decided to defect and went over to the dark side and went to Kentucky. And we've been mad at him for a long time, but the statute of limitations has run out. So we're no longer mad at Jimmy. We're just glad to have him back today. He is with the University of Kentucky and doing a great job down there as extension forage agronomist. So if you would please welcome Dr. Jimmy Henning.
Thank you, John. And I am really, really, really happy to be back in Missouri. I'm glad the statute of limitations ran out. I was in Missouri at Columbia and traveled the state from 86 to 1990, and that was my first job out of school. And I can tell you that the 450 miles or so from Lexington to Columbia did not make me into an expert. You know, I was a student when I left Lexington as a fresh graduate, and I got to Missouri, and frankly, the first time I thought somebody was going to actually do what I said, it scared the living daylights out of me. Okay, so what you hope I'm not at that stage anymore in my career. Actually, I'm glad, but I do know some of the challenges we have in Missouri, and I'm really glad to be back. Well, we've got an hour, or until the bell rings, right? This is like school, and it gives me a little kind of a feeling to be back in school. I ought to be checking my locker, you know, I'm afraid to be late to class, can't chew gum, and I'm thinking, I've got to cook in class. Wow, this is really heavy stuff, you know. But I would like to know who you are, right? We're going to be here for an hour, which is like as long as church, right? And I'm supposed to talk for 45 minutes, right? Which is longer than the preacher. We may have to sing some songs to fill up some time, okay? But so tell me who you are, tell me about you so I understand, you know, kind of how you approach this topic this morning of soil fertility and uncertain times, prices, and so on. So I'll start right here on the top first row on the left.
Dave Bauman, I live in Illinois, Talenton, northern central Missouri.
Okay.
Just wanting to learn about pasturing cows, beef cows.
Okay. Dave Bauman. Okay.
Ted Garnham, live just south of here, 35 miles. Got a cab operation. Trying to figure out how to make profit.
No lie. Okay. Tad. Okay. Yes, sir.
Landry Jones, out of southwest Missouri.
Okay.
Polk County around Springfield. Cow calf operation as well as work for an ag retailer here in Missouri and a couple grazing specialists for the conservation grazing.
It's a long doggone way from here to southwest Missouri.
Yes, sir.
I did a meeting one in Macon one night, and I was supposed to be in Springfield the next day. Bad planning.
Yeah, about 4 hours.
William Lee from East Central Missouri, and here trying to figure out how to just improve the quality of our pastures actually.
Do you work for Pioneer?
But I used to.
Okay, very good. Up Pioneer.
Rusty Lee, I'm a recovering livestock producer and a row crop farmer in East Central Mo, and currently a field specialist and a agronomist for University.
Okay, Rusty, great. One of my best friends in Southwest Georgia was named Rusty. And there are not too many Rusties around. And not too many Jimmys either. I'm J-I-M-M-Y, birth certificate legally. So my mother just liked me. Okay. So what's on the farm, Josh? What's your nothing? Okay. Very good, Josh. Thank you. I'll start right behind you. Okay. Okay. All right. Very good.
Near Copenhagen, 45 miles east of Kansas City, in farming country, which I'm kind of different. I like my cows and pasture.
Yes. East of Kansas City. You're away. So
Lexington, Missouri. Yes,
yeah.
very well.
Sure.
Barry Steinman. Used to live in Salisbury, Missouri, now live in Albany.
Okay.
Retired from MFA, did agronomy work, precision ag work, certified crop advisor. And since I retired, I'm living pretty good
So that's looks pretty good size. What's that?
I got 200 plus adult mamas,
Yeah.
9 bulls, heifer herd of 24.
And we'll keep you off the streets, yes, sir.
24 for the kids in the lot.
Yeah.
Getting weaned, right?
Yeah, if you know, that's about 6 times the size of the average herd in Kentucky. 30 cows and 180 acres is the average herd. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Raymond Rogers, I live
No
on
help.
Princeton, part of Green Hills.
Uh-huh, yeah.
My son and I operate a Rogers Ranch. We run about 200 plus red Angus and Senecal cows.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm getting more into the seed stock.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
We manage 100 acres for
Targeting like the grass-fed, the natural finished type with red Angus or all kinds here?
all kinds. We sell bulls, females, and we do market some beef. Breeder.
Yeah. A hot area, and finding the right genetics is even harder for that kind of thing. Yes, ma'am.
Joy Lane, North Pennsylvania, in Winston, Missouri, so about that, and now,
Okay.
Kevin and South.
Great. Joanne, nice to have you here. Yes, sir.
Vince almost owned farms, high density grazing cattle, sheep run wild. Son has a grass fence beef operation, we have South Pole cows,
Okay.
and mother son West Road crops with cattle farms.
Oh, okay. All right, that's good. Yes, sir.
That's the type of thing we extension of an ag economist on cattle as well.
Uh-oh, I got an ag economist in the room. I got to straighten that out. Yes, sir.
John Buck, Kirksville, Missouri. I just live about a mile from here. But anyway, I've got 40 meat deals there. I got 25 acres out there, but also on another farm down south of Kirksville. Some of the poorest ground known to man. I need some help.
I'll tell you, that's a challenge. That is really a challenge, I'll tell you. Yes, sir.
Tom Beastman, I'm from Brinktown, Missouri, I'm a cow-calf operator.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
German, yeah, we're from Taylor, Missouri, we have cow-calf operation.
Okay. Very good. Yes, sir.
David Audie from Kapoka, Missouri.
Oh, yeah.
And we run cow-calf and then do custom grazing. My question
Uh-huh.
is, we haven't used commercial or any fertilizer in 30-some years. We do any hay production,
Don't do
just
hay.
grazing. So I want you to tell me whether I'm right or wrong.
Hey, well, let me see your W-2, your Form F. After 30 years, you know whether you're doing it right or wrong or not. Unless you're subsidizing it, like some of our farms do, you know. If it's all just you and the farm,
No, I work off farm.
marked off the farm.
And my wife works off farm.
Well, that's a challenge, and we'll talk about that a little bit too, because, well, we'll talk about that. That is really the gist of this. This is the gist of this. Yes, sir.
Alan Berkler, Unionville, Missouri. I got 20 sheep.
Okay.
Just learn more about soil and stuff.
Very good. Yes, sir.
John Walker, Osborne, Missouri. I have a cow-calf operation. I specialize in replacement, show me select quality calf.
My good friend David Patterson and that works in that program. Yeah, we have he probably started it in Kentucky. We have a similar, the elite heifer sale, where you're checking the size of the pelvic area. Yeah. If I was good in livestock, I'd have been a specialist. I'm not good in livestock. Yes, sir.
Hey, my name's Tim Bell. I'm coming here from Marshalling. I just bought 100 acres that part of it's been in CRP for about 30 years, so I'm looking at improving my grazing ability on that particular thing. Hopefully, in goal, I'd like to be able to grass finish some beef along with some multi-species, whether some goats to help keep things down.
Good idea.
All along there, see what I can do from a holistic perspective.
That's a blast from the past, because when I started, CRP was new, and actually that was the first scary day in my career, was proving all those seeding mixes and dates, and we'll talk about that. Yes.
Dennis Ryan from Island. We have an 80-head cow-calf operation, practicing intensive grazing management, and we buy 100% of our hay.
Buy your hay. Good idea. Okay. Yes, sir.
Lucas Miller from Ethel, Sweet. Got like 60 cows.
Okay. Yeah.
And we
rotate them every day, where I can feed them hay.
Right, good. Yes, sir.
Same deal.
Okay,
I'm John Troyer from Ethel.
okay,
I just wanted to learn more about improving the land.
okay. Good job. Okay, very good. Yes. All right, sounds good.
Elton Mile. I graze 100 head of sheep, rotationally grazing,
Okay.
center part of Illinois.
All right, super. Well, thank you for that. I really, this is a topic that has just bothered me a lot, but mainly because if you look at the run-up in fertilizer prices since doggone March even, I mean, I don't remember this happening in the year. Looking back, it has happened in very unusual times again. But so what I want to do is to talk about in a hay and pasture setting with livestock, just how in the world are we going to weather this situation, right? The fertility, right? So I'm going to touch on a lot of things, and I'll move through this fairly rapidly, but please, the most important thing I can do in this hour with you is answer the question you brought to the table, you know, okay? All right, so let's go. Oh, by the way, I work in Lexington, Kentucky. I'm married, I have a daughter, 3 grandsons, and can show you pictures if you want. Okay, so here's the roadmap, here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about knowing all you can about your soil. Some of you said you're just kind of on the front end of things. And I will say everything in this talk, I've learned by making the mistakes, okay? Not paying enough attention to soils, I've made that mistake. So don't do that. I don't recommend it. All right. Now, and you know, the crucial part of this is to develop a soil fertility strategy based on the likely response, okay? In farming, and our ag economists, right? There is a cost-benefit ratio to everything. It's not always dollars on, you know, the payback's not always dollars on the input. But in the long run, 30 years, we got to have more benefits than there is cost, or it's just not going to be sustainable for our grandsons, for example. I want to just show you a little study that one of our agronomists did, Rusty, down in south central Kentucky on summer nitrogen on tall fescue, because tall fescue, love it and hate it, you know, is kind of the base grass to a lot of Missouri, certainly Kentucky, and understanding that cool season grass response to fertilizer is really important. It is the kind of the basis for your perennial pastures most of the time. We could use more natives, John, to get us through the summer slump. And, you know, so that's important. And then ways to focus on management, not necessarily money, all right? Because money is always in short supply, and so is your time. Okay, this is a resource, John, you should recognize, you know, the NRCS Web Soil Survey. I remember looking at the maps and the books, and I never really could make that work for me, you know. But with the Web Soil Survey, punch the green button. If you punch in Web Soil Survey in your internet browser, you will get a page that looks like this. Punch the green button, and with a little bit of technical, you know, maneuvering, you outline your fields or your farm, and it will tell you, it'll show you your soil type. Even better, you can use a publication that one of our coworkers at Kentucky wrote called the catchy title, AGR 222, right? You'll remember that, I'm sure. To estimate the carrying capacity of cool season pastures, and you could just put in Missouri, because it doesn't matter. It'll work in Missouri as well as it works in Kentucky, using the Web Soil Survey, okay? AGR 222, you want to find it? You want to find anything in this talk? In fact, I'll show you how to do that in just a second. But just type in the title and then UKY, and it will bring this up right on the top. Okay, so what will that tell you if you did it? It will give you a listing of your soils. It will give you, once you choose you want to raise, you can choose hay. Those of you that are making hay, you can choose alfalfa hay production. You can choose, I think, cool season grass hay production. You can choose the cropping system, right? And then it will give you an estimate of productivity, which is really important on your CRP, right? Because that's new to you, probably, and some of you may have land that's new to you. then you really want to know what is its native productivity, what are its limitations. And you don't want to be surprised, after you've invested hundreds of dollars in seed and fertilizer, that it's really not the place for the thing that you planted, or it's not going to respond to what you want, okay? Or not going to respond in the way that you want. Again, I have used it. I have helped troubleshoot farm scenarios where the farmer comes to me and they says, this field really isn't doing what it ought to do. And we did a quick look at the farm, and we found out, well, that, Steve, it's really not that field that's the problem. You're not getting all you can out of this field because it's a deeper soil. You got the you have the opportunity to put a better forage there. So you can really do some farm planning with that. Now there is also a tool, and I'm not sure where it is in Missouri, the Graze model. Graze 4, yeah. Now, and John can give you the wherewithal to find that.
Just your soil conservation in your NRCS office.
And that's also going to be good for those of you that are doing what-ifing scenarios, right? You can put in your land base, your livestock base, or I should say your fields and forage selections. You can, I believe it lets you choose grazing efficiency and things like that. And it gives you a simple forage balance. Do you have enough on paper, according to what the books say, or we base the yields off of things like variety trials and farmer experience. And that will help you just do a quick and dirty, long and short. Have I got enough forage, or do I not have enough forage? How much hay am I going to need on average, right? Of course, we will never know an average here when we finally get one, I'm sure. But it is one of those tools that can help you do the planning you need, and to try to find out, am I trying to make a system work that really is not going to be sustainable? Which is, you don't want to find that out after 5 years, and you've invested a lot of money and time, and you find out you're short of acres, you got too many livestock. And I got to tell you, in Kentucky, we raise horses, and we raise some really nice horses, but we have usually too many horses on not enough land. And when you are overstocked, there is no fixing that, okay? I don't care what you do. Well, you will fix it. You'll bring in hay by the truckload, right? And your place will look tough, bad. So let's keep moving. How many of you know, or maybe you want to take this survey for your neighbor. How many of your neighbors have a soil test? Raise your hand, We're going to, the starting place for developing a strategy to get through the times we are in is a current soil test on every field, right? Now, some of you that have worked for MFA and other ag supply stores, is that a service somebody can access if they buy their fertilizer from you? Who was an MFA'er? Somebody was. Can they? If I say...
Most locations, fields will pay for sure. Well, I've been having to pay for fertilizer tests.
Okay.
And precision, then that's all based on 2.5 acres and usually maybe a $9 fee for that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one time proved very beneficial. You find good spots in the field and bad spots,
well, and as we will see, where the cows go to the bathroom and where they don't. Yes. Well, the point of this is that you just got to have a soil test. Get your grandson, get your son, get somebody, get them to take a soil test. Take a lot of soil tests. It is the start to a rational plan. So let's just, things you're going to find. What is the soil test going to do? It's going to quantify some things about your soil, the acidity in particular, and the nutrients. That's the pH, that's the acidity, the phosphorus and the potassium. In Kentucky, we don't measure nitrogen in the soil test. Some states do, some commercial places do. It'll also measure organic matter, and frankly, soil health and the whole idea of how healthy your soil is a current school of thought that's really churning right now. A lot to learn. There's some talks on it today. I don't know all I need to know about soil health, but one of the things you can measure that will give you an indication of your soil health is how much organic matter do you have? You know, according to the smart people, and I'm not a smart soils person, I got the t-shirts to show it. Organic matter is one of the simplest things we can measure that's correlated to soil health. There are ways to get at it more directly, more expensive, okay? It gives you the baseline without a test. You're just guessing. We can't afford to guess most of the time. Sample pastures every 2 to 3 years. In your 30-year pasture scenario, chances are, if you haven't added fertilizer, the nutrient levels, if you rotationally graze well, have not changed that much. You know, they may move around, but they don't change that much. Hay fields more often, because hay fields, as we will see, is 100% removal of nutrients. And if you're making hay on land, it's a red flag. You do not really have an option about buying fertilizer. You just need to have a good banker right now. And in Kentucky, and this is specific to the state, right? We sample pastures and hay fields at 3 to 4 inches. Not a deep one, but a 3 to 4 inch sample. And every state can be different, and I don't remember Missouri's. 6. Okay, so there we go. Thank you, Rusty. 6 inches. Do it like your lab is calibrated for. It doesn't help to take a deeper sample. In fact, it will cost you more if you take a real deep sample, because the nutrients get really skimpy the deeper you go, usually. And the soil gets more acid. All right? So take your soil sample the way your lab is calibrated. Commercial lab, universities, wherever you're sending your soil sample. Okay, no test, no strategy, no cure, right? All right, so major soil amendments that we're going to talk about. Now there's a lot of discussion, particularly as you get into the more intensive systems in hay, about minor nutrients and foliar feeding. I'm going to stick with the meat and potatoes, because these are the big rocks you put in your box first. If you are on the upper end and you are really pushing things, then there are discussions you can have about some of the more advanced things you might do. But we need to fix these things first. We're going to talk about fixing the pH. We're going to talk a little bit about nitrogen management, because nitrogen is it's the thing that can push pastures, for the most part, grass pastures, the furthest, the fastest, okay? And phosphorus and potassium. And in Missouri, in Kentucky, we are really fortunate, and incredibly fortunate, to have phosphorus numbers in the soil that are sometimes so high that legally the cows can't go to the bathroom, right? They will violate your phosphorus plan. In Missouri, you don't usually have any trouble with that, you know? They can go to the bathroom all they want, usually, and it's all good. All good. Potassium, on the other hand, can be all over the board for us, and I'll show you an example. Now, one of the things, this is from our soil testing lab and our soil testing people. I want you to have a really good idea. You've now got your soil test in hand, right? And we're going to talk about what, and I've had these discussions with producers who are looking at how much this costs anymore. How much do I put in? Where do I put it? And we will go field by field, and we'll talk about the likelihood of having a response, right? Well, I will cut to the chase. What you need to do is to apply fertilizer, particularly phosphorus and potassium, down when we get it by our lab's definition down in the low to very low, or on the maybe middle medium. If you are in the medium to upper range, then chances are this is the year not to put fertilizer out, P and K, unless you're a haymaker. All right, unless you're a haymaker. If you are a haymaker, you need to know your yields, and you need to know how much nutrients you're taking off every year, because if that isn't the beginning point of discussion for fertilizer for your fields, you're backing up. Okay, is that clear? You know, if you're not putting back what you're taking off, then you're coming down in terms of that soil. Now, soil is not like some glass marbles with the fertilizer mixed around it, right? The soil is actually nutrients in various stages of availability. If you could zap all of the nutrients in the minerals in a soil, you'd have fertilizer up to here, usually. You may have some things you don't want, but you know, the soil has to kind of give it up over time with weathering and rain and interaction with roots. The thing about crops that we know is, especially hay and cropping, is that those nutrients are removed and taken off the farm. Okay? So build a strategy based on whether you're going to get a response or not. And this, I would have a discussion with my agronomist, with my co-op, somebody I trust, with who I'm buying fertilizer from or working with, to know, okay, you know, with my limited budget, where do I put the money? Where do I put the money? And it may be on some of the fields that you would consider less good, okay? Now, I will tell you, it is my human nature, and I think it's human nature, is I really want to polish the stuff that's already shiny, okay? I don't want to work on the stuff that's rough, right? It's just human nature. With soil fertility, you kind of have to start in terms of your response, right, to the stuff that's on the low end. Now, this is from the Missouri Grazing Manual, and I really like the point that it makes, because the forage legume that you choose to use, or that you are using, has a characteristic need for fertilizer, okay? And this is a table that it's not really, you'll notice that the soil test level, very low, low, medium, and high, and this is kind of the catch-all, everything from pH to phosphorus and potassium required for the persistence. Now, this is not necessarily production, but persistence, to get that forage, you know, in your field and keep it there. The interesting thing is, of course, alfalfa, highly productive, you know, high quality, high value. It has the highest need, and I think we intuitively understand that. I think we do. But look at Annulus Benisa. Maybe not a real glamorous forage, but one you can use, one that works well for you, that works hard for you. And in Kentucky, again, because we have some soils that are more naturally fertile, we see more of the clovers. But when we get to the side of the farm where we're eroded and where we have lower fertility, guess what starts showing up? Annulus Benisa. Okay. Now, buying Annulus Benisa right now has some sticker shock. You remember the price? It can be $2 a pound. And our seeding rate may say 25 pounds. Well, that's $50 an acre, right? Perhaps that's high. You wouldn't want to spend $50, but just knowing that if I have some Annulus Benisa on my poorer soils, it could be a very useful legume to try to foster by your management so it reseeds for you, okay? Now, it may be a bigger player. Who's my Southwest Missouri person? There is one. Bigger player for you in Southwest Missouri? Yeah, and it may not be as big up here because we're in kind of birdsfoot trefoil territory up here, all right? You can see birdsfoot trefoil somewhat in this range. Red clover, a little more like alfalfa, white clover, you know, pretty tolerant. But just keep in mind that when we talk about legumes and their need for neutral pH and fertility, they're not all the same. They're not all the same. Now, cool season grasses, in terms of pH, P and K, just to persist, they're pretty tolerant of pretty tough conditions. Now, they will respond to fertilizer differently, and that's a discussion we can have. I want to highlight the pH just for a second, because I think we're going to come down to the conclusion this year that with the prices of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, it's a good year to buy limestone, all right? And here's why. pH, soil pH, and so those of you that know your soil pH or know the soil pH of your neighbor's farm, give me some numbers. What are they? 6? Any 5s? 5.3. 5.3, yeah, there you go, okay. All right. The interesting thing about lime and pH, right, is that when we get into the acid range, we begin to tie up the nutrients we want. P and the K in particular are less available. And sometimes we can get nutrients we don't want. You know, like too much iron and so on. That seldom happens. But a colleague of ours in Cornell went through and did some math on this This is the fertilizer wasted by acid pH. And this is, and it really struck home with me because when we are in the 5s, then the nutrient, the fertilizer you put out is only 54% effective by his math. Okay, now can you calculate that to the pound? No. But it makes the point that as you get more acid, the fertilizer you do buy is less available to the plant. Okay, because of the chemical changes that happen in the soil. Because as I told you, the nutrients in the soil are not like just liquid and sitting there, right? They are moving back and forth between the plant, the minerals in the soil, because it's not like a marble, it's porous, right? And there's chemistry going on. And some of the potassium and phosphorus goes into the minerals, you know, as much or more than going into the plant. And with the pH being acid, you get less efficiency, okay? All right, let's move fast here. In a pasture system, your 30-year pasture system, you take off almost no nutrients. This is some work by John Laurie here at the University of Missouri, where he calculated how much in the way of nutrients the cow-calf system removes. And of course, if you're on a cow-calf system, and then you're selling calves, and you're selling cull cows, right? Cow-calf pair removes 10 pounds of nitrogen, 3 pounds of phosphorus, or 7 pounds of P2O5, which is the form, the math that we use in fertilizer, and 0.7 pounds of potassium, less neurons. You know, only 1 pound of K2O. Now, hang on to that kind of number and compare that to what happens in hay. Let me make sure, yeah, this is coming up next. Hang on, here we go. For this presentation, 1 ton of hay is going to have 45 pounds of nitrogen, 15 pounds of P2O5, 55 pounds of K2O. And how much did the cow-calf system remove? 1 pound, right, of K2O. Yes.
Is that based on a conventional pasture system or rotational grading or density or what?
That is a good question. It won't matter for, the grazing system won't matter. Now, it will matter on other ways. It'll matter where the nutrients go on the farm. But in terms of what comes off, unless you're selling more calves, you know, then you're selling more nutrients, but you're not moving that many nutrients, you know?
I see what you're saying.
Got it?
Okay. The location of the nutrients can be really good some places, really poor.
Oh, you're not kidding. So now I have a lot of friends that work in the ag supply business area, and they gave me these are November prices, right? So in this presentation, everything I show you that has a price on it is 78 cents a pound for nitrogen. That's ungodly. 61 for P2O5, and that's using diammonium phosphate, backing out the credit for the nitrogen. That's how much the phosphorus costs. And 58 cents a pound for K2O using muriate of potash. Okay? Come in handy or later. I want to tell you about a study, a little farm study that we did. Walked up on this field. Actually, I saw it cut in September. The guy said, I don't think I have the orchard grass I planted, you know? And I saw the hay, and it was kind of that blue-green color, but I looked at the field, and I thought, that's not orchard grass. What is that? That's the field.
Broom sedge.
Broom sedge, right? Yeah, a perennial warm season grass, right? But not what he wanted, not what he planted. Turns out it was a very interesting field. This is a very small producer. He raises goats. Who are goat producers? There's a few, right? Yeah. Raises goats, has somebody come make hay off this field, and it may or may not get fertilizer, but it's the hay field. There's no fences on this field. It's been managed that way for more than 10 years. They saw the broom sedge, the neighbors told them about pH. They limed it, the pH is 6.8. pH is not the problem. Phosphorus is naturally high, and they were also using some fertilizers to put some phosphorus back, but look at the potassium. It's very low by our numbers, by our standards, okay? When you got this way, by years and years and years of taking hay and only using triple 19, having no strategy. Now we'll fast forward to the end after all the next data I showed you, and then now we know what he ought to put out on that farm, and I worked with him this spring. Guess what he put out? Triple 19. You know, because there are other things in the equation besides the absolute right answer, isn't there? There are. It's the way it works, right? But now he knows what's going to happen. All right, so we did the study starting in 2018. We'll move through this. Here's the NP&K effect on total dry matter yield for selected treatments varying in potash, because it's the one that's really out of shape. All right. This is the total for 2018 in the green, 2019 in the tan, and you can see it goes from the insanely high rates of 180, 40, 360 up to about 4 tons per acre on a fescue field. It's just fescue, and a ton to a ton and a half with nothing. All right, but that's not the really interesting thing that happened here. Let's move on to this. Here we go, skip it. The botanical composition, the broom sedge cool season grass mix measured in the fall at the end of the year for the no fertilizer, which was 17% cool season grass, 83% broom sedge, and on the, pick your nitrogen treatment, something with nitrogen in it and some potassium, we're 90+% cool season grass, and the remainder is broom sedge for the most part. Now, I'll put some numbers on this, and because it will sober you up when you see the numbers. But the point of this is that the fertilizer benefits include some other things besides yield. Forage quality, for example, mature broom sedge is, it probably is 40% digestible. That supplemented, you might be able to make it work, but it's not going to be eaten. There's the plot of cool season grass in the middle of some low fertility plots, and you can see that that's a heck of a lot more grass there. Yes.
Can you go back a slide?
Yeah. Oh, to this?
No, to the, there you go.
Yeah.
So, that 184 to 0.
Yeah.
Decrease the broom sedge.
Yep.
But you didn't add any potassium.
That's correct.
And that was the limiting factor of the soil test.
Yes, a very good observation. Because I went into this study wanting to know what the potassium effect was, and it's there. But you know what that was? The cool season grass was here for us 100% bluegrass. It was the most unusual thing because we started with a fairly homogeneous place, right? This is all fescue. This is all bluegrass. Now, I don't know if you have bluegrass here, but that was a weird scenario. So I'm showing you one study. You kind of have to, you can't push that too far, extrapolate too far. But it was probably the nitrogen in the cutting that got rid of the broom sedge, not the potassium. Yes?
You think you really got rid of it, just suppressed it?
What's that?
You think you got rid of it, just suppressed it?
Well, I won't know that for a while, but I don't think it's there anymore, and I'll show you why. Take a look at right there. This is the second spring after the heavy treatment. That's a heavily fertilized plot next to the broom sedge, or the unfertilized plot. Time will tell. We'll go back to that spot and see, if I've got cool season grass still dominant in those heavily fertilized areas. Okay? But the point I want to make with this whole study to you is there are some costs to this. This is real cost. 180 pounds of N, that's three applications, 60 pounds at a time, way more than you'll put. $268 an acre, 180, 40, 180. I mean, that'll buy the farm, every year probably. But we got yield, we got quality, we got some broom sedge control without losing a year of production. You ever done the numbers on total renovation of a field? It's not the cost of the seed or the fertilizer or the herbicide, it's doing without production for a year. That's the sobering cost, right? In this case, we could keep the field in production, no plows, no nothing, with just fertilizer. Is that gonna work in every case? No. But it's a principle that's important here, and that is, it's usually better to fix what you have than to start over economically, okay? Usually. It depends. Yes, sir.
Would he been beneficial to go in there with a renovator, a pasture renovator, and tear that open, you know, and then apply some of your material and open it up, the side mass, that broom sedge, I'd rather eat a broom than a broom sedge.
I don't know. I mean, I really can't say. I guess the good thing is I didn't do that and I got a good response. I don't know about the tearing it up. For us, if we tear up a place, we do get a bunch of weed encroachment. I don't know about you. If we open up a lot of bare soil.
This just pokes a hole, twist.
Oh, you're talking about a renovator,
A renovator, yeah, a pasture, aerator, renovator, whatever.
Well, for this soil, this site, I don't think it would help. We've looked at the numbers of the aerators, and I'll tell you the thing when I get to this point, I can't really say to a farmer, buy this equipment, because I can't tell them how that piece of equipment will produce this many more calves to pay for that piece of equipment. You know, now if you've seen a response on your farm, that's something that I don't. Yes.
One of your fertilizer treatments, where you use the high amounts of nitrogen, that's basically a one-year shot. But when you use the high amounts of potash, isn't that a prolonged treatment?
Well, it can be. Potash is like nitrogen. It is really readily available and real fast. So in fact, at those very high rates, we split it. 180 in the spring, 180 in the fall. Because typically, if you put it all out 360 before the first cutting, it will take up half of it in the first cutting in what we call luxury consumption. It's gone.
So when you use either treatment, if you get a result like this, can we back off?
Well, can you back off and see what happens next year?
Yeah.
Well, I went back to that site this year. I want to see it because I know it only got triple 19. And I will tell you, it looks pretty good. It looks good. It was all green, all cool season grass. I didn't really see it in November when whatever the broom sedge is going to show itself. But I didn't see it in November. Okay. Good question. Well, so fertilizer is insanely expensive. No kidding, you knew that before you got it. You just got to know what are you going to get, where are you going to put it, what's going to happen, how are you going to get paid. Okay? I want to talk about a quick study because in our state, this one gets at something at the sulfur issue. And in our state, if you want to have a animated discussion in fertilizer, talk about sulfur. Okay? Because it will, right? This is a county agent-driven study. It uses tall fescue put with summer nitrogen, right? Because we know the big response with fescue is spring and fall. Summer nitrogen. I'll just move through this real fast. There. I want to pull out three treatments. Urea plus ammonium sulfate, enough to deliver 60 pounds of N. You're getting some sulfur with that. Urea plus NBPT, the urease inhibitor. This is a summer applied thing. And urea alone, this is updated with current prices. In that summer cutting, they got a ton with this treatment, 0.84 tons per acre with that, and urea alone 0.65. You take the fertilizer cost, which is the real cost, that cost per ton of that forage, I believe my economics is at least defendable here. $61 a ton for the urea plus ammonium sulfate, 75 and 128. Is that a good deal or not? It depends. You know, how much can you raise hay for it? How much does it cost to buy hay? And those sorts of things. And how likely are you on your soil to get a response in midsummer, right, with that? And here's another caveat. The hay was taken off in May. So this is still growing in Kentucky when we're still raining. Because we can get pretty dry late summer. If the first cutting happened June 15, changes the economics of what's going to grow after. Okay? All right, so now into the last point I'm going to make. Renovation, things that are management, not money. Limestone's still relatively cheap. Clover benefits, they're long and we want them, we like them. Now, I will talk about this at 11 o'clock, but this is a table that people like me have used for 40 years. Here are your perennial, well, there's some annuals up there, but our major perennials, the alfalfa, the alfalfa, white clover, red clover, they potentially fix some pretty high numbers of nitrogen, right? The real question is, when is it available to the grass? We'll talk about that at 11 if you can come back. If you can't, I'll send this to you. Okay, there's also an article if you want to take that. Now, hay testing doesn't cost anything, or it costs a little bit, right? But it lets you know you don't, the thing that's expensive about not testing hay is when you have a train wreck, right? Or you're buying nutrients twice. So don't buy the same nutrient twice. And frankly, it's easier to keep weight on cattle energetically than it is to put weight on cattle once they get thin. And thin cows, well proven, do not rebreed, okay, as fast. So let's keep moving. Hay feeding management's a big point I want to make you aware of. Hay feeding spreads the nutrients. We want to move the nutrients within or from, the nutrients may be moving within or from the outside. Feed on the poorest pastures if you have a choice, right? You know, you are moving nutrients. The hay from the hay field to some place. If you're feeding your hay, for bought hay, it's nutrients from off the farm to your place. Move the feeding points around. It used to be my thinking that, you know, it's really simplistic to feed hay. Use a ring, eat all the hay, life is good. Well, and agronomists didn't think too much of rolling out hay or some of the, you know, different kind of feeding methods. Well, in fact, rolling out hay or even some of the, I'm going to show you, oh, well, how much is in a ton of hay? How many nutrients? $57 a ton. 57 bucks. If you're selling hay, you're not getting $57 a ton. And we sell a lot of it in Kentucky for $20 a roll. Trust me. All day long, every day, right? There's a lot of fertilizer in hay. Don't let it go to waste, right? Unroll it. There's some manure distribution. I like this picture better because Greg Howlett at the University of Kentucky has really taken a deep dive into bale grazing. And this is the manure piles on one of his bale grazing scenarios. And I would highly recommend you Google Howlett, YouTube, whatever, and listen to one of his talks. There's a lot of practical stuff about how to do this so that you capture the nutrients in hay.
Okay? Around those rings, aren't those where he's controlled grazing, are that trunk to pieces, or the left hand come back?
Well, yes. And depending on whether, where they are, when the rain comes, your soil type, you can get that kind of damage. But what Greg has worked out, and under our conditions, is how much hay per acre should you put out, right? And for us, it winds up being like 4 1,000-pound rolls per acre, okay? So you got a whole acre, and you put the hay, you put the bales out in the fall when the weather's nice, like now, and strip it off with hot wire, and allocate it that way. And when you have a heavy stocking rate, if you will, then you wind up making some mess. And frankly, he's done it. He's done it, and so he's got at least a scenario, a starting point for you that I think will let you do it without getting into a lot. But yes, you may have to reseed those spots, but it's easy to get clover back in those places. It winds up being something to look at when there's $57 a ton in nutrients in that hay. But I'm with you. I hate the idea of tearing up a pasture, right? And let me say, winter of 2019, our hay feeding areas looked like the surface of the moon. It was terrible. It was horrible. Well, and your rotational grazing, your points about redistributing nutrients, they move towards the water. If we subdivide, this is actually from Missouri, some classic data. A 24 paddock system, where are the manure piles? And of course, that's where the urine piles are too, versus a 3 paddock system. You can just see you've got more even distribution. You've got a lot more, manure spread across the whole field compared to concentrations near the water, and that's a shade tree actually right there. And that was done at Linnaeus by Jim Garish. Okay, so what should you do? This is the payoff, right? Have a strategy. Here's the bill. Know the cost-benefit relationship. Focus on the pH change, and then use legumes where you can and capture nutrients. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Gates. And remember, just circle the 5 on the evaluation.
That worked for me.